Ah, there we go. See, now it works better when you turn the actual microphone on. And if you end up watching this on YouTube later, disregard the first minute or so in this. Welcome to the Griffin Pools and Spas SEC Women's Basketball Tournament coverage. I'm Elijah Campbell from the early game, here to recap the day's action with you. And look, the road to Phoenix starts today, and it started today, right? The road to Phoenix starts with your conference tournament, and this team with national title aspirations, they have plenty of them. South Carolina beats Kentucky 87-64 to move on to the semifinals, where they will play LSU. We'll get into more of that tomorrow, right? We can save the game preview stuff for LSU tomorrow morning before I head back to Greenville to cover that game. A real breakdown of today's game, though, a whole lot to get into. Look, this Kentucky basketball team that South Carolina had to play today is a reflection of how deep the SEC's gotten, right? This is a team that was top 20 nationally, that was 9th seeded in the SEC because of that loss they had to South Carolina on the last day of the regular season. And we can start at a lot of different points in this game, but I think the main takeaway here is the fact that South Carolina was able to take advantage of a team that was coming off of playing for their third game in three consecutive days, right? Like, those were tired legs for Kentucky, and you knew that you had to get out on them quick, right? The advantage you probably had in this game is just being a better team, but freshness and being able to go up and down the floor. And with Joyce Edwards dropping 21 points today, she was 8 of 12 from the field, but a lot of that came in transition. Look, and you talk to a lot of the players after the game, you know, the sentiment was shared amongst all of them, right? Between Maddie McDaniel, Tania Latson, Isla McDowell, they all agreed that the biggest part of this game and being able to win this thing by 20 plus points is by getting out on them early, making them have to run, testing their, I guess, fatigue levels in this game. And it certainly showed throughout the first 3 quarters and some change, and really South Carolina cruised in this game. You look at the stat sheet and you're going to see Joyce Edwards as the leading scorer, and she definitely was the most effective at putting the ball in the basket today. And again, a lot of that in transition. I think that's one of Joyce's superpowers, is even as a big, she runs the floor incredibly well. And a lot of those baskets in transition, it wasn't like she got the rebound and then just beat everybody on the floor. She won the foot race, right? Off ball, won the off ball foot race. And that ended up being a huge, huge sign that they were going to be in better condition to play this basketball game. They were going to be more game to be able to play this, and they were fresher. And it wasn't even just in transition, too. You got to give Joyce her flowers for being able to finish inside, too. I mean, 8 of 12 from the field is incredibly efficient, and she gets a lot of shots around the basket. And sometimes for the South Carolina team, whether or not they're making their shots around the basket is the one thing that could possibly deter them from winning games. The last game they lost was at Oklahoma, what feels like many moons ago now. But in that game, they missed a lot of shots around the basket, and that was the whole reason the game was even in overtime to begin with. And today, they just did not miss as many around the basket. And Joyce is a big part of that. And Joyce is one of those two, as a big who is so good off of the dribble, is able to get into her spots, being able to get to the basket and finish around the basket, even in traffic, right? Because Kentucky, at a few points in this game, decided to go zone and really test South Carolina's willingness to shoot a lot of threes. And Carolina didn't have to shoot a ton of threes. They just made a high volume of them. But when Joyce got the ball in the paint and was playing in a little more of a phone booth, she was able to do that more effectively than anybody else on the floor. And I think that was mightily important. You look, too, at the physicality difference between South Carolina and Kentucky. Medina Okot ended up getting a double-double in this game, 12 and 13. She's had over 20-plus of those this season, and it was no different today. And Kentucky is one of the few teams in the SEC that can match South Carolina with their size. It just didn't work today. And I think the dominance that Carolina had in the offensive rebounding element of this thing is one of the reasons they're able to separate so much, because even the shots that they did miss, they were able to get back and turn into easy buckets. Those were two big things. And of course, Medina Okot too, hitting a 3-pointer in transition. I think that was the point in this game where I kind of accepted this was going to be a little bit of a cruise fest going into the last 2.5 quarters of this game. And if she's able to can hit that consistently, we've seen her do it more here in the last, month and a half of the season. What that does for the team too, in terms of opening the floor up, is remarkable. It opens up driving lanes. It helps your guards be able to win one-on-one going to the basket. It helps them be able to space everything out a little bit more. It just makes you harder to guard because Medina's shot's really good. I mean, it's really fundamentally sound. Elbows tucked in, follow through, everything is in check. She's got a really good jumper. And now that she's been able to apply that in game action and shooting it confidently, it's always been a part of her game. But when you're shooting like that and you're shooting a lot better, it certainly becomes easier to do it when you are more confident. And that's just another element of what makes this team so dangerous. Is a reason South Carolina's top 5 in efficiency, offense, and defense. And when your transition game is clicking like that, you're getting a lot of assists. I was talking with Terry Ford about this on the post-game show earlier this afternoon. And at one point in the game, at halftime, right, South Carolina had 13 assists, only 3 turnovers. And Maddie McDaniel told me after the game, look, that's the name of the game as an offense. You want to be able to generate as many good shots as humanly possible. You want to be able to dictate the type of shots you get. And that's one of the reasons why this offense is so successful, is because they're constantly getting about 30 shots at the basket per game. And a lot of those are assisted. We talk about sometimes Tania Latson's scoring numbers or Tessa Johnson's scoring numbers, but what's most important that these guards do so well is they're able to get the ball into the post, right? Dominant post scorers like Joyce Edwards, Medina Okada are only as good as the guards who can get them the ball, right? The ones who can handle ball pressure, who can handle multiple different defensive looks. And Kentucky certainly tried that again with that aforementioned zone. And when you're able to move the ball like that, and you're able to find weaknesses in the opposing defense, and you're not turning the ball over, even an average shooting night is going to be a highly efficient offensive performance. That's what we saw from the South Carolina team, was that it was, in terms of an effective field goal shooting standpoint, it was good. It was solid. It was over 50% for most of the game, but it's not mind-numbing, right? But they were able to get over 1.2 points per possession because they maximized their possessions. Even the shots they missed, they grabbed a high percentage of those offensive rebounds, and they just didn't turn the ball over. There's been a few times this year where South Carolina might have been in a game that was closer than it should have been. I'm thinking of, the Florida game from earlier this year, where turnovers were a little bit of an issue. They were not an issue in this game. And I think the fact if this team can play a full 40 minutes of basketball and stay under 11, 12 turnovers in a game, they ended up with 11, but a lot of that came kind of in the second half. Then there's not a lot of teams that can match them with their size, their ability to shoot from the perimeter, their ability to get to the basket, draw fouls. They do everything so well on offense, and their ability to rebound their missed shots. That changes so much when you're just not turning the ball over. And going to Tessa Johnson too. I mean, we talked a lot. I spoke with Tyler Head and Jack Veltri on the Extra Point earlier this morning as I was driving into Greenville at Bon Secours Arena. And they asked about Tessa, and she struggled a little bit shooting the last time these two teams met on Sunday in Lexington. She was 2 for 10 from 3-point range in that game. And I told Tyler, I said, look, she could shoot 2 for 20 in a game, and it's not going to matter to me. I'm actually encouraged that she continued to shoot, right? Even if they weren't falling, I'm pretty encouraged that she got 10 3-pointers up. And any game in which Tessa Johnson shoots a lot of threes is never going to be a bad game, right? That is never going to be a disappointment by any stretch of the imagination. Shooters shoot. That's what they do. And if you watched her in warmups, she was knocking down every single three. And it was one of those two where she's not just hitting threes in warmups, which a lot of really good shooters do because you're not being guarded, but they're not touching any of the rim. Like, that's one thing I like to look for too, is how are you making certain shots in warmups whenever nobody's guarding you? And Tessa was at the point where she was hitting nothing but net every single shot. And it was incredibly remarkable. It was one of the more impressive things when watching these teams warm up earlier today, was you could see while in that warm-up period that, hey, look, this could be a Tessa Johnson game. And she ended up scoring 15 points. She was 3 of 4 from 3. And it seemed pretty effortless. It was all within the flow of the offense. You could tell that she wasn't deterred by any type of recent shooting struggles or any injuries that she's dealt with kind of throughout the course of the season. She was knocking down a lot of triples. And the way she does it too, she can get her shot off over anybody, right? She's got a good high arcing shot, a very high release point. when Tessa's doing that, and if she's able to make 3, 4, 5, sometimes maybe 3-pointers in a game, it's a recipe for success. And when we talk tomorrow about the game against LSU coming up, one of the reasons why they were able to pull away against LSU or be able to take over that game was her 3-point shooting. And they're really going to need that tomorrow, especially with the way LSU shot the lights out at Bon Secours Arena earlier today. And when it comes to what happened today too defensively, that's another part of this, right? They won the game in Lexington on Sunday against the same Kentucky team because of how well they defended, and they held Kentucky to 56 points, which that's another superpower this team has, is that even when their offense isn't flowing really well, even if they are turning the ball over, they're still able to keep themselves in games because defensively they'll just smother you. And Clara Strack, who was, fresh off of a pretty remarkable 33-point performance against Georgia yesterday by hitting 5 threes, got some of her shots off. I mean, she played all right, but you really hounded her. You brought in a level of physicality that she couldn't handle. She turned the ball over 5 times in this game. Was she efficient shooting? Yes. She was 5 of 8. Did she make a 3? Yes. But she didn't make multiple threes. And that was a big part of this game. Did she keep her off the offensive glass? Yes. She only grabbed 1 offensive rebound in this game. But the big thing is the forcing of the 5 turnovers. And when you have South Carolina's size and your length, and just how well you guard the ball too, all post entries can be met with doubles that can result in turnovers. We saw so many of that in this game too. And just the combination of defensive pressure you're able to put on them, forcing them to shoot bad shots, protecting the paint. Because here's the thing too. Clara Strack's got great size. She's about 6'5", 6'6". She's got really good size. She's a stretch big, but a lot of the times one of her best abilities is her ability to score around the basket with an array of post moves. She does out of all the SEC bigs that are really good this year, and there are a lot of them. She's one of the best at footwork, at being able to gain an advantage when she puts the ball on the floor and when she picks up her dribble. And she just didn't have any of that. She didn't have a ton of room to operate. And that's where you credit Medina Okot and Joyce Edwards and Miriam Dowda, who gave this South Carolina team some really good minutes off the bench. I'd be remiss if I didn't give Miriam Dowda her flowers. Not like she's stuffing the stat sheet, but she did give you a handful of minutes off the bench. She gave you 17. Now she ended up fouling out of the game, but that's a sign of her aggression too. And I think anyone that's watched Miriam play, the thing that you look at is there's a lot of ability. There's a lot of talent. She's really tall, so she plays that center position. Can you get her to have a little bit of that dog in her? And I think she had a little bit of that dog in her today too, including an offensive rebound putback earlier in the game and a catch and shoot 3. When you're getting those quality minutes from her, you're getting 17 minutes from her off of the bench, and she's able to spell the starters, especially considering if you're going to win this SEC tournament, you got to win 3 games in 3 days. And it helps when you're able to be spelled for about 17 minutes at a time, and the bench unit comes in and produces. Speaking of that bench unit too, I don't know if I can do this entire show without talking about Maddie McDaniel and just kind of the growth that she has made as a player, because Maddie is one of those, because of her size, maybe she doesn't finish amongst the trees really well inside. But when I watched her this year, my whole thing is, I don't care if you score. Can you facilitate? Can you avoid turning the ball over? And whenever we talk about it on the early game, myself, Preston, and Jen, I always bring up, when talking about Maddie McDaniel, what is your assist to turnover ratio looking like? How many minutes are you playing? And does the offense flow really well while you're in the game? And she had 2 assists, 1 turnover, but she was able to score 7 points today. And any points you get from Maddie, I think, is a plus, because this is not her role. But she had 1 really good finish in the lane amongst Kentucky's bigs. She had a really good, awesome sidestep move in transition to get her a bucket. She really got within the flow of the game, and she helped you, and she was able to give you a ton of minutes, which means Raven Johnson doesn't have to play as many minutes. Tessa might not have to play as many minutes. Tanaya Latson not have to play as many minutes. You need them fresh as possible for the game tomorrow. And I think that objective was achieved in this win over Kentucky today. And throughout the whole course of everything, if you're a Gamecock fan, I can understand how maybe you might have been a little concerned about this Kentucky team coming in, and I wouldn't blame you. There are not many teams in college basketball outside of kind of that elite class of teams. So like your South Carolinas, your UCLAs, your UConns, that are going, and Texas, I'll throw Texas in that tier too, that are top 20 in both offensive and defensive efficiency. Kentucky is one of those teams. They're really well-rounded. Coach Kenny Brooks is one of the better coaches in women's college basketball. And you knew they'd come in here pretty motivated. And you knew that was one of the reasons why they gave you such a good game in Lexington, because it was a hostile environment. And that's a good basketball team. And when you didn't have your A game on offense, yeah, it can result in a 4-point win that might feel closer than maybe it should have been. But also that's a game too where there are no implications of seeding in the SEC tournament because you already locked up the 1 seed. You already locked up the regular season title. It's human nature maybe to just subliminally not go 100% and be able to be as motivated to give your A game in that type of performance. But they really showed today how much better of a team they are than Kentucky. And it did help too. It's one thing I asked every player in the locker room after the game was, what were the big differences between the game on Sunday and the game here on a Friday at noon? And the biggest thing was A, being fresh, right? That was the last game that they played. Kentucky's played 2 here this week already. And B, the environment, because Dawn didn't give much credence to the fact that the environment at Kentucky gave them trouble. She gave them credit for creating a really good environment, but she didn't think that was the reason why it was a 4-point game. In the game today, however, Greenville becomes Columbia North for a little bit, right? It is Gamecock centric. The place is packed. It was a full house in that game today. And one of the reasons why they keep having this thing in Greenville every year is because how many tickets that they're able to sell on a day-to-day basis. But credit to the fans too. I mean, and they show up, they travel, and you don't have to go far to travel from Columbia to Greenville. So it's an easy drive. They really showed out, and they're going to need that tomorrow too. And I think it's always one of the more wild things every single year is when I go to the SEC tournament and I'm sitting courtside at Bon Secours Wellness Arena and I close my eyes and I hear a basket get made and I hear the crowd's reaction. I couldn't tell you if I was in Bon Secours Wellness Arena or Colonial Life Arena. You can't tell the difference. And I think that does provide an advantage. Even if it's not your home court, it provides a really good advantage. And you could feel the tide shift in that second quarter. Kentucky hung around the first. I give Kentucky a lot of credit. They hung around the first quarter, but when South Carolina got out in transition, Joyce started getting clicking and she was getting moving, and Raven was able to hit a couple of really tough shots. You could feel the momentum and the tide turn in that arena. And I think ultimately that made a huge difference in South Carolina being able to keep their foot on the gas and be able to get this thing out of reach before Kentucky could even get themselves back into it. By the time it's a 20-plus point game, good luck. Not many teams are able to come back against a Don Staley coach team once you already find yourself down 20. So to recap, Joyce Edwards, 21 points, 8 of 12 from the field, winning foot races down the floor. One of the more impressive things from this game is Joyce's ability to win the foot race down the floor and to be able to get easy transition buckets, capitalize on a team that's been playing, their third game in 3 days. The transition offense in general, you outscored them points in the paint, you outscored them a lot in transition, you outscored them a lot on the bench. It was a full team effort on offense too, outside of Joyce's 21. Part of that is Tessa Johnson being able to knock down a trio of 3-pointers, and Medina Okot too getting another double-double. Look, she's going to be the player with the best size on the floor almost every game that she plays. She dominates rebounding. She dominates putbacks. She can knock down a 3 here or there. It completely changes the tenor of a game, and she's going to be able to block shots. That's what she does too. And I think those things right there, along with the bench unit really coming in, giving you some really good minutes, whether it's Maddie McDaniel scoring 7 points, Miriam Dowd is showing a little bit of toughness when it comes to getting an offensive rebound and a putback, and not being a minus when she gets into the game. That's huge. It's huge for this team. And when it comes down to energy preservation, which once you get into the second half of your first SEC tournament game, energy preservation is a huge part of all of this. So all of that combined, you saw an incredible game from South Carolina, which I would say, because Preston asked me earlier today or this morning on the early game, what can South Carolina get away with playing in this game to be able to win? I said, you could probably get away with playing your C-plus game, right? You can get away with playing your C-plus game, maybe a B. And today they played their A game. And when they played their A game, the only team in the country that's going to be able to touch them is UConn. And we'll have that discussion further on down the road because, like I mentioned earlier, the road to Phoenix, where the Final Four is, started today. in Greenville. South Carolina wins 87-64 over Kentucky. They will get LSU tomorrow, and the last time they played LSU was in Baton Rouge, and it was an absolute doozy. I'm hoping for an absolute doozy tomorrow too. Should be a fantastic game, especially considering LSU scored 100+ on Oklahoma earlier today. And don't forget, all of my coverage in the SEC tournament in Greenville is brought to you by Griffin Pools and Spas. Look, they have their 50th anniversary sale, and it's a family-owned and operated operation. So, of course, they're going to celebrate with a 50th anniversary sale, 12 months, no interest, financing on spas, above-ground pools, liner replacements, a $500 discount on above-ground pools, $950 savings on all spa purchases. That sounds really good. And they have all spa brands, too, to add to that, right? Bullfrog, Tropic Seas, Generations, Marquee. Swim spas are in stock. You can save thousands on in-ground pools, fiberglass, and vinyl liner. And in-ground financing is available with $500 cashback voucher. Don't wait around. Look, we had our false spring a couple of weeks ago. The warm weather you're feeling now, I think, is spring, being here to stay. And what better way to get out in front of all of your pool needs than to go to Griffin Pools and Spas and have them help you make your pool nice and good. They make you feel good. They'll make your pool look good too. Don't forget, follow us at 1075 The Game on Twitter. You can keep up with these post-game reaction videos at the Game TV Radio on our YouTube page. And I'll be online all day tomorrow too at E_Campbell3, giving you my thoughts on the game as it happens tomorrow against LSU. And of course, more reaction, more post-game video with our interviews with the players following the game. All of our coverage brought to you by Griffin Pools and Spas. I will talk to you again tomorrow morning to give a little bit more of a detailed breakdown of the South Carolina LSU game. But until then, have a good one, and we'll see you tomorrow.